The question is that this bill be now read a second time. The member for Hughes.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Net Zero Economy Authority Bill of 2024, which I will be opposing, Deputy Speaker. And the Coalition will be opposing this bill, Deputy Speaker, for a number of reasons, and I will elaborate on all of these reasons, but essentially there are five reasons. This bill, Labor has promoted as being a bill to support net zero transition, particularly in the regions, but this is anything but when significant research is done into this bill. This is an industrial relations bill, and the Labor government, in introducing this bill, is simply providing yet another gift to the union movement. This bill is also showing bureaucratic waste and duplication. It is showing a top-down, Canberra-centric approach, which is set to fail on delivering for the unique needs of the regions. And, Deputy Speaker, the regions have unique needs to the metropolitan areas around Sydney, but also each region in and of itself has unique needs, and this bill is going nowhere to address that. Finally, it is imposing significant obligations on businesses, particularly within the regions, and their obligations on small, medium and large businesses alike. Deputy Speaker, my seat is the seat of Hughes is a metropolitan seat. So when I was considering the approach on this bill, I particularly had regard to the speeches and commentary by my colleagues who are either members of the National Party or my regional colleagues. I've just been present in the chamber for the member for Bowman's speech, and I was similarly present for the member for Herbert's speech. And I think then that those of us who have seats, therefore, in metropolitan areas, it was important that I consulted with those who are in the regions, because they understand their seats the best, and they are unanimous that this will not deliver for their specific areas. So if we just turn, Deputy Speaker, to what this bill is actually about. And it is stated that it will be to transition the current Net Zero Economy Agency from an executive agency, which currently sits within the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, to a standalone statutory authority known as the Net Zero Economy Authority. And under the legislation, the authority's stated functions are to firstly coordinate net zero policy and planning across government. Secondly, to facilitate both government and private participation and investment. Thirdly, to support affected workers. Fourth, to provide First Nations Australians the opportunity to participate in the transition. And fifthly, to deliver educational and promotional initiatives as Australia transitions to a net zero emissions economy. That sort of statement of objectives, Deputy Speaker, motherhood statements, and if that may well be the intention of these bills, but when we delve into the substance of these bills, we can see that it will not, the legislation as currently drafted, will not achieve those objectives. And the two broad aspects to the legislation that in fact operationalise the authority's powers is the facilitating of new investment in the net zero transition, and it has been stated that the authority will be a shopfront for industry and investors. It's stated it will seek to work with project proponents and state governments to get renewable projects to investment decision. That all sounds fabulous, but it won't do that in practice. It's to mobilise public monies through vehicles like the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and the National Reconstruction Fund, with private financing support, address enabling infrastructure needs and navigate regulatory processes. The second main responsibility of the authority is to assist the impacted workers in that transition area through the Energy Industry Jobs Plan. And what this plan will do is to allow the authority to utilise the current IR system to manage the redeployment of workers in closing coal-fired and gas-fired power stations and their dependent employers. And this includes coal mines, for example, that are reliant on a closing power station. What the plan does not specify, Deputy Speaker, or anticipate is the types of employment that workers may transition into. Therefore, we say that this is essentially an IR bill disguised as a bill for the regions and the transition. As already indicated, in the Coalition's view, this has significant flaws, this legislation, and as we found out the night of the government's failed budget, the government has already doubled the authority's budget to nearly $400 million. $400 million alone, with further funding to a total of $1.1 billion over the medium term. But what this is establishing is simply a range of another big Canberra bureaucracy across the Net Zero Authority, the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations and the Fair Work Commission, when it has been unable, the government that is, to detail the actions that this authority would perform. So instead of consulting with the regions, instead we will have a Canberra bureaucracy dictating to the regions what will occur in each and every region and what will particularly occur to their deployed employees. So this is very important for regional Australia. The component of the Net Zero Economy Authority that relates to new investment in the net zero transition is simply a bureaucratic waste. It largely mirrors the responsibilities of existing federal and state agencies. When we already have those agencies established, Deputy Speaker, it is difficult to understand then why these are being duplicated and the setting up of more Canberra bureaucrats. The authorities that will be duplicated include the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, the Australian Renewable Energies Agency, and the role of existing mechanisms such as the Major Project Facilitation Agency. And this is because the authority explicitly has responsibility for facilitating public and private sector participation and investment in greenhouse gas emissions reduction and net zero transformation initiatives in Australia, including in new industries. But, Deputy Speaker, this is almost completely copied and pasted from the Clean Energy Finance Corporation's legislated role. Therefore, and also, then when we look at the role of the Australian Renewable Energies Agency, it similarly contains exactly those sorts of authorities. So with this level of duplication, when it is couched as being to promote new investment, this is highly concerning, and it simply is going to be Canberra, again, trying to dictate to the regions what will occur in their particular areas. And what we have seen with this type of body, it will be simply a national body. It's going to be a top-down, Canberra-centric approach. It won't be able to fully consider regional needs and priorities. And we've heard already in this place from many members whose seats are in regional areas, and they have pretty well identified and articulated individual needs for their particular regions. Therefore, having a top-down approach to say this is what is going to occur in all of these regions throughout Australia simply does not make sense when one considers that every region throughout Australia is unique and will have unique needs. It's also quite likely, Deputy Speaker, that once established, the federal government will continue to add additional powers and responsibilities to the authority to support its net zero and climate ambitions. But it remains unclear, and I say it will always remain unclear, as to how this authority is actually going to assist workers in the regions who will be facing unemployment. And of course, when unemployment comes through those regions, in many cases, particularly in the smaller towns, the whole town collapses. So what we saw with Labor's budget this year, as I said, was that the funding has now been budgeted to $400 million, with a further funding to total $1.1 billion over the medium term. It's still unclear how many will be employed in this authority and what its specific tasks will be, besides a very generalised view to supposedly assisting those in the regions who will be losing their jobs as we transition to new energy. We already have over $13 billion in taxpayer-funded subsidies for big business, and so this legislation goes nowhere, and indeed will only add to this crisis that we already have. It is far too much spending. Instead, Labor should be focusing on dealing with energy costs, with high inflation and its current out-of-control red tape. This is adding one more layer of red tape, one more layer of bureaucracy. And as we turn to the impact that this will have on small and medium businesses particularly, we need to look at the reality that's facing most Australian businesses, not just in regions but also throughout the metropolitan areas of Australia. We already have insolvencies at record highs and more businesses going offshore. So supporting a small number of big businesses in this area is irresponsible and a slap in the face for small businesses directly seeking answers from this government and desperately seeking help simply to survive. And I'll turn now to the second biggest feature of the proposed legislation, which is the Energy Industry Jobs Plan. And this has been a carryover for many years when the current Minister for Disability Services, Bill Shorten, was leader, and it has been part of an ALP, the ALP national platforms, going back to 2018. Australia's current industrial framework already features a well-established safety net that applies and has applied for a considerable amount of time in instances of business closures and industry change, particularly in the areas of the closure of coal-fired power stations. Therefore, it is unclear why this new plan is in fact needed. As has already been stated, a further national agency to assist regions is simply duplicative of state-based mechanisms that have been designed to achieve the same outcome. For example, if we turn to some of the specific regions, in New South Wales, the New South Wales Government has the Hunter Regional Plan, and in Victoria there is the government's Latrobe Valley Authority Transition Plan. This new authority, however, Deputy Speaker, would cut across the work and the vision of existing regional development Australia committees, which recognise that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to creating vibrant regions. So therefore this bill is again going to add another layer of regulation that has not already been considered by the Fair Work system, and how this authority and how this bill and the regime that it is setting out will work with existing Fair Work, the Fair Work system is completely unclear. It appears that there will be significant overlap with existing industrial obligations without in any way setting out how those existing obligations in the case of interaction will play out. Therefore, Deputy Speaker, for all of these reasons, the Coalition and I will be opposing this bill. Thank you.